Hey there. Tonight we're going back, way back, to a time when moving an army wasn't about GPS coordinates or supply trucks rumbling down highways. No. Tonight, you're going to experience something your history teacher never told you about. You're going to become Marcus Flavius Cursor, a 23-year-old legionary in the Roman army, marching with 50,000 men across hostile territory, without a single map, without a compass, without even knowing if you're walking toward glory or your own grave. The year is 168 BCE. You've been walking for 6 weeks. Your sandals are falling apart. Your feet are bleeding through the leather. The man beside you died 3 days ago from drinking bad water, and nobody even remembers his name anymore. You don't know where you are. Your centurion doesn't know where you are. Even the general probably doesn't know where you are. But you keep walking. Because that's what 50,000 men do when someone tells them to. They walk, they bleed, they die. And somehow, they always end up exactly where they're supposed to be. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let me show you how it actually worked. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, what time it is, and whether you've ever gotten lost without your phone. Because tonight, you're about to understand what being truly lost really means. You wake up before dawn because the cornice is blowing that cursed bronze horn directly into your skull. Or at least, that's what it feels like. Your eyes crack open in the darkness of the leather tent you share with 7 other men. And immediately you smell it. The overwhelming stench of unwashed bodies, stale breath, and the sour wine someone spilled on the ground 2 nights ago. Your back aches from sleeping on nothing but your cloak spread over hard earth. You're still wearing your tunic because taking it off means being cold, and being cold means not sleeping, and not sleeping means falling over during the march. Your name is Marcus Flavius Cursor, which is ironic because cursor means runner, and right now you can barely stand. You're 23 years old, which makes you practically ancient in a legion where boys of 17 pretend to be men. You've been in the army for 5 years, which means you've survived longer than most. Your hands are calloused from digging ditches every single night. Your shoulders are permanently hunched from carrying 80 pounds of equipment. You lie there for exactly 3 more breaths, staring up at the sagging leather ceiling, listening to Gaius snoring beside you like a dying ox. And you think about home. You think about your mother's bread. You think about sleeping in an actual bed. Then you think about the punishment for being slow to fall in, and you move. You always move. Because in the Roman army, thinking about home is allowed, but staying in bed, that's a flogging. Outside the tent, the camp is already chaos in that organized Roman way that always makes you feel like you're simultaneously part of something magnificent and completely insignificant. Thousands of men are emerging from their tents like ants from a disturbed hill. The sky is that deep purple-black that comes just before sunrise, and you can see your breath in the cold mountain air. You're somewhere in Macedonia, you think, or maybe Illyria. Honestly, you stopped knowing exactly where you were about 3 weeks ago. The centurions know. Presumably. The general definitely knows. You're told you're chasing King Perseus and his army, that you're closing in, that any day now there will be a great battle and glory and all that. But right now, all you know is that your feet hurt and you need to piss, and the morning porridge is probably going to be the same watery slop it was yesterday. You walk toward the latrines, which is just a long ditch at the edge of camp, and you do your business while standing shoulder to shoulder with 50 other men, all of you staring off into the distance with that 1,000-yard stare soldiers get. Nobody talks. It's too early for talking. Besides, what would you say? beautiful morning to squat over a trench, isn't it? You finish, use the communal sponge on a stick that you try very hard not to think about, and head toward the smell of smoke and cooking fires. The cooking area is a line of fire pits where the contubernium groups prepare their morning meal. Your group of 8 men takes turns cooking, and thank the gods it's not your turn today, because you're terrible at it. Gaius, who somehow managed to get here before you, despite snoring like a hibernating bear 10 minutes ago, is already stirring the bronze pot. The smell is, well, it's food. That's about the best you can say for it. Porridge made from barley meal, some onions if you're lucky, maybe a bit of salted pork if the supply chain hasn't completely fallen apart again. You grab your wooden bowl, the one you've carved your initials into so nobody steals it, and hold it out. Gaius slops a greyish mixture into it without even looking at you. It's hot. It's edible. It will keep you alive for another day of walking. That's all that matters. You squat down near the fire because the warmth feels good, and you eat with your fingers because spoons are for people who haven't been marching for 6 weeks. The porridge tastes like it always does, like nothing, but also somehow like everything bad. You eat it anyway. Around you, 50,000 men are doing exactly the same thing, eating the same porridge, squatting at the same fires, preparing for the same endless march. And you realize, not for the first time, that you're not really an individual anymore. You're just one drop of water in a massive human river that flows wherever the generals point it. You finish eating, wipe your bowl with a handful of dry grass, and tuck it back into your pack. Now comes the part you hate most, even more than the marching: packing up the tent. Your contubernium of 8 men shares one leather tent, and that tent weighs about 60 pounds, which means it gets strapped to the mule. Except your mule died 4 days ago, so now it gets divided between the 8 of you, along with all the other equipment the mule used to carry. You're already carrying your weapons, your armor, your personal belongings, your share of the cooking equipment, your digging tools for making camp, and 3 days' worth of grain rations. This is approaching 80 pounds. Adding another 8 pounds of tent leather to that might seem like nothing, but you know better. You know that by hour 6 of today's march, that extra 8 pounds will feel like 80. Your tent mates are already pulling up stakes, literally, yanking the wooden pegs from the ground with sharp tugs. You join them, grabbing your section of the tent and beginning to fold it with the practiced efficiency of someone who has done this exact task approximately 200 times. Nobody speaks. There's nothing to say. Fold, stack, roll, tie, distribute, shoulder, stand, wait. The routine is so ingrained that you could do it in your sleep, which is good because you're basically still asleep. Now comes the armor. You walk to where you left your equipment lying in a somewhat organized pile, because leaving it inside the tent means someone might step on it in the darkness and crush something important. Your lorica hamata, the chainmail shirt, hangs on a wooden frame that you've carried for precisely this purpose. You lift it off, and even though you've done this 1,000 times, the weight still surprises you. 30 pounds of iron rings, each one linked to 4 others, creating a shirt that will stop a sword slash, but also will make your shoulders scream after hour 3. You pull it over your head, feeling the cold metal against your skin even through your tunic, and you adjust it so it hangs properly from your shoulders. Then the belt goes on over it, cinching everything in place. Then your gladius on your left hip, the short sword that has kept you alive in 2 major battles and countless skirmishes. Then your pugio, the dagger, on your right hip as backup. Then your helmet, the bronze one with the red plume that makes you visible to your centurion in battle, which is either reassuring or terrifying, depending on how you think about it. The helmet has a dent in it from where someone tried to split your skull open at the Battle of Callinicus. They failed. You didn't. The helmet stays. You don't bother with the cheek guards yet, because they make it impossible to hear commands during the march, and missing a command means punishment. The shield is last, because the shield is your constant companion for the entire march, and you want to delay that reunion as long as possible. Your scutum is a curved rectangular piece of wood covered in leather and canvas, with an iron boss in the centre and iron binding around the edges. It weighs about 20 pounds, which doesn't sound like much until you remember that you're going to be carrying it for 8 to 10 hours today. You sling it over your back using the leather strap, and immediately your spine objects. Between the chainmail, the weapons, the pack with your personal belongings and rations, the tent leather, the digging tools strapped to your pack, and now the shield, you're carrying somewhere between 90 and 100 pounds. You are, essentially, a pack mule with legs. And the army expects you to walk 20 miles today, in formation, while maintaining visual contact with your century, while being ready to form battle lines at a moment's notice if the scouts report enemy contact. You stand there, fully equipped, and you feel the weight settling into your bones. Around you, 49,999 other men are feeling exactly the same thing. And you know, with absolute certainty, that in about 6 hours, you're going to be fantasizing about dying just so you can stop walking. The wait continues because the Roman army doesn't move until it's absolutely ready to move. And getting 50,000 men ready to move is like trying to organize 50,000 cats who all hate each other. You stand there, locked in place, and you feel sweat starting to trickle down your spine inside your chainmail, which is deeply unpleasant. The sun is rising now, proper daylight replacing the dawn, and you realize with despair that it's going to be a hot day. Hot days are worse than cold days when you're marching, because at least on cold days you can warm up by walking. On hot days, you just cook slowly inside your armor like meat in a bronze pot. Finally, after what feels like hours, but is probably only 30 minutes, the trumpets blow the advance signal. The sound echoes across the valley, and 49,999 other men hear it too. The entire formation lurches forward like a massive mechanical beast. You take your first step, then your second. Then you settle into the rhythm that you'll maintain for the next 8 to 10 hours. Left, right, left, right. Don't think about the weight. Don't think about your feet. Don't think about how you need to piss again already. Just walk. Keep pace with the man in front of you. Maintain your spacing. Watch for hand signals from the centurion. Left, right, left, right. After the first hour, you've already forgotten what it feels like to not be walking. This is your life now, walking. This is all you've ever done. You were born walking. You will die walking. The landscape around you is hills covered in scrub brush and the occasional olive grove. Macedonia, definitely. Or maybe Thessaly. The locals watch from a distance, these Greek-speaking farmers who want absolutely nothing to do with a Roman army passing through their land. Smart locals. Roman armies don't pay for food. They requisition it, which is a polite word for taking whatever they want and leaving an IOU that will never be honoured. You're part of an auxiliary cohort now, at the rear of the main column, which means you're eating dust kicked up by the 40,000 men ahead of you. The dust gets into everything: your mouth, your nose, your eyes, the gaps in your chainmail. You're going to be coughing up brown phlegm for a week. The sun is higher now, And yes, it's definitely getting hot. You can feel it building under your helmet, inside your armor. Sweat is running freely down your face, stinging your eyes. You can't wipe it away because your hands are occupied. One holding your pilum, one maintaining balance. So you just blink it away and keep walking. Left, right, left, right. A man 3 rows ahead stumbles, goes down on one knee. The centurion is on him instantly, vine staff raised. The man scrambles back to his feet, falls behind, get flogged. Simple as that. By hour 3, the pain has distributed itself evenly across your entire body, which is almost meditative in a way. Your feet hurt, your shoulders hurt, your back hurts, your neck hurts, your legs hurt. Everything hurts equally, so nothing hurts specifically, and you can just exist in this general state of suffering without focusing on any particular part. This is good. This means you're not injured, you're just marching. Around you, the formation continues its relentless forward movement. You've covered maybe 10 miles so far, which means you're roughly halfway through today's march. The column passes through a small village, just a cluster of stone houses with thatched roofs. The villagers have hidden everything valuable and are standing in their doorways watching you pass with the dead-eyed stare of people who have seen armies before and know better than to resist or engage. An old woman makes a sign against evil as you walk by. You're too tired to be offended. The scouts ride up and down the column on horseback, these lucky bastards who don't have to walk. And they're shouting something to the officers, but you can't hear what. You don't particularly care. Unless they're shouting enemy contact or halt for rest, their words don't matter to you. You're a legionary. You march where you're told. You fight when you're told. You dig when you're told. And you die when your number comes up. You're hallucinating slightly now, which happens when you combine heat, exhaustion, and dehydration. Nothing dramatic, just little tricks of the light that make you think you see water where there isn't any, or that the man ahead of you is your brother when it's definitely not your brother, because your brother is back in Rome working as a baker and is definitely not stupid enough to join the legions. The army allows one brief rest at midday, and when the halt is finally called, you don't sit down, because if you sit down, you'll never get back up. Instead, you just stand there, swaying slightly, and drink from your water skin. The water is warm and tastes like the leather it's been stored in, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. You're supposed to ration it because you don't know when the next water source is, but your body is screaming for fluid, so you drink more than you should. Gaius next to you is sitting down despite knowing better, and his face is the color of old parchment. You nudge him with your foot. "Get up," you say. Your voice sounds strange, cracked and hoarse. He looks up at you with unfocused eyes. "Can't," he says. "Sitting feels too good." Centurion sees you sitting. "You'll feel his vine staff," you say. "That'll feel better?" Gaius considers this wisdom, then hauls himself back to his feet with a groan that sounds like it comes from his soul. The rest lasts maybe 15 minutes, which is barely enough time for your muscles to stiffen up completely. And then the trumpets blow again, and everyone groans, actually groans out loud, because the groaning is collective and therefore can't be punished. You put your helmet back on, which is like putting your head into an oven. You hoist your shield back into position, which makes your shoulders scream. You grip your pilum, which your hands don't want to do anymore, because your hands have decided they're done being hands and would rather just be nerveless lumps at the ends of your arms. And you start walking again. Left, right, left, right. The afternoon march is always worse than the morning march because your body hasn't had enough rest to recover, but has had just enough rest to remember what not moving felt like. Every step is a negotiation between your will to avoid punishment and your body's desperate desire to just lie down and die. The terrain is getting more difficult now, rising into hills, and hills mean the formation has to work harder to maintain cohesion. You're going uphill, which adds a whole new dimension of suffering. Your thighs are burning, your calves are cramping, your breath is coming in ragged gasps. Ahead, someone falls out of formation and vomits onto the side of the road. The centurion doesn't even slow down, just keeps moving, and the man has to wipe his mouth and run to catch back up. At the top of the hill, there's a brief moment where the formation crests, and you can see the landscape spread out before you, and you understand something that the generals already know, but you're only now realizing. You have absolutely no idea where you're going. The terrain is endless hills and valleys, all looking exactly the same, covered in the same scrubby vegetation, dotted with the same small villages. There are no roads, not real ones, just dirt tracks that might have been made by shepherds or might have been made by the army that passed through here last week. There are no signs. There are no landmarks you recognize. The sun is your only reference point, and even that just tells you which direction is east, which doesn't help when you don't know whether you're supposed to be going east or north or somewhere in between. You're following the men ahead of you. Those men are following the men ahead of them. Somewhere, way up at the front of this column, someone theoretically knows where they're going. A tribune with maps, maybe. Or scouts who've been here before. Or the general, who's probably sitting comfortably in a covered wagon while you walk yourself to death. But you? You're just walking, because the man in front of you is walking. That's the entire navigation system. Follow the ass ahead of you and hope he knows where he's going. Going downhill is almost worse than going up, because your knees have to absorb the impact with every step. And after 6 weeks of marching, your knees are held together mostly by scar tissue and prayer. You can feel them grinding, bone against bone. And you know with certainty that when you're 40 years old, if you live that long, you'll walk with a limp like every other veteran you've ever met. The formation is moving faster now because downhill is easier, and you have to lengthen your stride to keep up, which means more impact, which means more pain. You pass a milestone marker, one of the stone columns the Romans set up along major routes, and you actually laugh out loud because the marker is so old and weathered that you can't read what it says. Helpful. Thank you, Stone. Very informative. The man next to you, Titus, is limping badly. His right foot is bleeding. You can see it squelching out of his sandal with every step, leaving little red footprints in the dust. Titus, you say, your foot. He glances down without breaking stride. I know, he says. Blister broke 3 hours ago. If I stop, I fall behind. If I fall behind, I get flogged. So I walk. This is Roman logic at its finest. Your foot is literally bleeding out of your shoe, but stopping to bandage it would result in punishment. So you just keep walking and hope you don't bleed to death before camp. Late afternoon now, and you're 6 hours into the march, with maybe 2 more to go before camp. And you've entered that strange state where you're not really conscious anymore. You're just a body going through motions, a machine made of meat and pain. Your mind has disconnected completely. You're thinking about the weirdest things. The shape of clouds. A dog you saw 3 weeks ago. Whether there's fish in that stream you can't actually see, but can hear in the distance. Anything except the reality of what you're doing, which is carrying 100 pounds of equipment across hostile territory while slowly cooking inside metal armor. The column passes through another village, bigger this time, maybe 100 people, and they've actually brought out food to sell, which is brave of them. The centurions allow brief purchases if you can make them without breaking formation. You fish out a couple of copper coins that you've kept in the small purse on your belt and grab a handful of figs from an old man's basket as you walk past, dropping the coins in the same motion. You eat the figs immediately, stems and all, because you're too hungry to care about sophistication. They taste like the best thing you've ever eaten, which tells you how low your standards have fallen. Gaius manages to grab some bread. Titus, whose foot is now leaving a consistent blood trail, doesn't have any money, so he just keeps walking. Hour 7. The sun is lowering toward the horizon, which means camp time is approaching, which means you're almost done, which gives you just enough hope to be dangerous, because hope makes you think about stopping, and thinking about stopping makes everything hurt worse. You can see the scouts riding back from ahead, which usually means they've found a suitable location for tonight's camp. Good water source, defensible position, flat ground for the tents, the usual requirements. The column begins to slow, which sends a wave of relief through the ranks that you can actually feel, like a physical pressure releasing. Then the trumpet blows the halt signal and everyone stops, and the silence is profound. 50,000 men stop walking simultaneously, and for a moment, there's just the sound of wind and someone coughing and equipment settling. You stand there, swaying, and you realize your legs don't remember how to not walk. They're still trying to march, even though you're stationary. You plant your pilum in the ground and lean on it heavily. Gaius sits down immediately, consequences be damned. Titus just stands there, looking at his bloody foot like he's seeing it for the first time. Around you, the centurions are already shouting orders, because in the Roman army, the moment you stop marching is the moment you start building camp. There's no rest. Of course there's no rest. You've just walked 20 miles, but now you get to build a fortified camp for 50,000 men before you're allowed to eat or sleep. This is the Roman way. Every night, full fortifications. Doesn't matter if you're exhausted. Doesn't matter if you're in friendly territory. Doesn't matter if there's zero chance of enemy contact. Every night, you build a complete military camp with ditches, ramparts, palisades, gates, and internal streets laid out in exactly the same pattern as every other camp you've ever built. You unsling your delabra, the pickaxe-shovel hybrid that's been banging against your hip all day, and you walk to your assigned section of the perimeter. Your contubernium of 8 men is responsible for approximately 40 feet of ditch and rampart. You start digging. The ground is rocky, which is the worst kind of ground because it fights back. Your delabra hits stone, and the impact reverberates up your arms into your already screaming shoulders. You chip away at it, you pry it loose, you move on to the next rock. Dig, lift, throw. Dig, lift, throw. You've done this 200 times before. You'll do it 200 times more if you survive. Next to you, Gaius is working in grim silence. Titus is leaving bloody footprints in the dirt he's digging. Nobody talks. There's no energy for talking. After an hour of digging, your section of ditch is about 3 feet deep and 4 feet wide, which is regulation depth and width, which means you can stop digging and start building the rampart. You take the dirt you've excavated and pile it on the inner side of the ditch, packing it down with your feet and delabra to create a raised defensive wall. Then you carry wooden stakes from the supply wagon, these pointed poles that have been transported specifically for this purpose, and you pound them into the top of the rampart to create a palisade. Each stake has to be driven deep enough to stay upright, but not so deep that it wastes wood. You're swinging a heavy mallet now, driving stakes, and your shoulders are making sounds that shoulders probably shouldn't make. The sun is setting, painting the sky in reds and purples, which would be beautiful if you had any capacity left for appreciating beauty. Around you, the entire camp is taking shape with frightening efficiency. Streets are being laid out in grid patterns. Tents are going up in organized rows. Command posts are being established. In about 2 more hours, this empty field will be a fully functional military fortress housing 50,000 men. And tomorrow morning, you'll tear it all down and do it again somewhere else. By the time the fortifications are complete and you've erected your tent in its assigned spot in the grid. Full darkness has fallen, and you've been awake for about 16 hours, and physically laboring for about 14 of them. Your tent goes up faster than it came down this morning, because you're motivated by the promise of sleep, and motivation works wonders. You crawl inside and collapse onto the ground, without even bothering to spread out your cloak first. Gaius is already snoring. Titus is trying to bandage his foot by firelight filtering through the tent fabric. You should probably eat something. The army provides rations, and you've got hard bread and cheese in your pack. But eating requires moving, and moving requires energy you simply don't have. You lie there in the darkness, every muscle in your body screaming, your feet throbbing, your shoulders in agony, and you think about the fact that you did approximately 25 miles today. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. The day after that, you'll do it again. You'll do it until you reach wherever you're going, which you don't know. And then you'll probably have to fight a battle, which might kill you. And if it doesn't kill you, you'll turn around and march back. This is your life. This is what you volunteered for, because being a legionary seemed better than being a poor farmer in rural Italy. You're not sure that logic holds up anymore. You wake up in the middle of the night because someone is shouting, and for a confused moment you think you're under attack. But then you realize it's just Quintus having a nightmare again. He's thrashing around, muttering about the battle at Callinicus, where half the century died. Someone kicks him and he wakes up. The tent goes quiet again, except for snoring and the sound of 50,000 men sleeping in close proximity, which is a susurration of breath and movement and occasional coughs. Your body has stiffened completely during your few hours of sleep. Everything that hurt before now hurts worse, and you have to piss urgently. You drag yourself upright, which takes genuine effort, and stumble out of the tent into the darkness. The camp is laid out in perfect grid pattern, so you can navigate by the tent rows even in darkness. You make your way to the latrine ditch, do your business, and on the way back, you pause for a moment to look up at the stars. They're incredibly bright out here, away from any city, scattered across the sky like someone spilled salt on black cloth. You know some constellations: the Pleiades, Orion's belt, the Bear. Your grandfather taught you when you were a child. He was a veteran too. He told you the stars were the only maps Roman armies ever needed. Point yourself the right direction at night, march that direction during the day, and eventually you'll get where you're going. Simple, except when it's cloudy, or when you don't know which direction you're supposed to be going in the first place. Morning comes far too soon, announced by the same cursed horn that seems specifically designed to cause pain. You've slept maybe 4 hours, which is standard. Roman armies don't really believe in sleep. They believe in efficiency. You go through the same routine as yesterday. Wake up, piss, eat porridge, take down the tent, put on your armor, form up, march. Except today, your body is starting from a baseline of already destroyed, so every movement is harder. Your feet have blisters on top of yesterday's blisters. Your shoulders have deep grooves worn into them from the armor straps. Your knees feel like they're full of ground glass. And you have another 20-mile march ahead of you. The formation moves out as the sun rises, and you settle into the rhythm again. And you realize with a certain detached horror that you're starting to not feel it anymore. Not that it doesn't hurt. It hurts exactly the same as yesterday. But you're developing a mental callus, a psychological distance from the physical suffering. You're walking, but you're not really there. You're somewhere else in your head, in memories, in fantasies, in nothing at all. Your body walks, your mind floats away. This is how Roman soldiers cover impossible distances. They learn to separate consciousness from flesh. The flesh suffers. The consciousness doesn't watch. Day 2 of the march is when you start seeing men fall out. Not many, but enough to notice. A man 3 ranks ahead simply stops walking, stands there swaying, and then sits down in the middle of the road. The centurion is on him immediately, but the man doesn't respond. The medicus is called over, and after a brief examination, the man is loaded onto one of the wagons. Heat exhaustion probably, or heart failure, or just the accumulated exhaustion of months of campaigning finally breaking through. You watch this happen with the same detached interest you'd give to a bird flying past. It doesn't affect you. You're still walking. That's all that matters. The terrain today is different. You're descending from the hills into broader valleys, which means the ground is softer, which means more dust. The dust is so thick you can barely see the man 10 ranks ahead. You're breathing dust, eating dust, sweating dust. Your snot is brown. Your spit is brown. The inside of your mouth tastes like dirt and iron and fatigue. Around midday, the column crosses a small river, and the formation has to ford it, which means marching through waist-deep water while carrying all your equipment. The water is shockingly cold and absolutely wonderful. For about 30 seconds, you feel almost human again. Then you climb up the far bank and the sun starts baking you in your wet armor, and you're actually worse off than before. By day 3, you've stopped thinking of yourself as a person and started thinking of yourself as a component of a much larger organism. You're a cell in the body of the Legion. You move when it moves. You stop when it stops. You have no independent will or desire beyond continuing to function as part of the whole. This isn't philosophy, it's survival. Maintaining your sense of individual identity takes energy, and you don't have energy to waste. So you let go. You become anonymous. You become no one. You are just a pair of legs carrying armor and weapons in the direction that 49,999 other pairs of legs are going. The scouts report that you're getting close to the enemy. Perseus and his Macedonian army are maybe 2 days ahead, moving east. The army's pace picks up, which you wouldn't have thought possible. But apparently, there are reserves of desperation that can be tapped, even when you thought you were already at your limit. The centurions are more aggressive with their vine staffs. The trumpet signals are sharper, more urgent. You're not just marching anymore, you're chasing, and you can feel the tension building in the formation, this collective tightening, because everyone knows that when you catch up to the enemy, the marching stops and the dying starts. Day 4, and you wake up not knowing where you are for a solid 30 seconds. Not just not knowing the location, but not knowing what year it is, whether you're in the army or back home, whether you're even alive. Then consciousness returns like cold water in your face, and you remember. You're Marcus, you're a legionary, you've been marching for 4 days. Your body has moved past pain into something else, some state where pain is just the background radiation of existence. Everything hurts equally and constantly, so it's almost like nothing hurts at all. Your feet are hamburger meat. Your shoulders are raw wounds. Your thighs are cramping constantly. But you can still walk. That's what matters. The army can work with can still walk. The moment you become can't walk, you become useless. And useless soldiers get left behind with the baggage train, or in the nearest garrison if there is one, or just left behind period if there isn't. So you can still walk. You definitely can still walk. The morning porridge tastes like ashes and despair, but you eat it. The armor goes on, even though just the weight of it makes you want to cry. The formation moves out, and you move with it. And somewhere deep in your mind, in the part that's still Marcus, and not just Legion Component 6347, you wonder if this is what dying feels like, this slow dissolution of self into pure function. On day 5, you see your first corpse. Not from battle, from marching. A soldier from another cohort who just stopped moving during yesterday's march was put in a wagon and died overnight. They bury him in a shallow grave at the side of the road with minimal ceremony because the army can't stop for individual deaths. You march past his grave, freshly dug, marked with a simple wooden post, and you feel absolutely nothing. Death is abstract. Death is for other people. You can't die because you're not really alive anymore. You're just movement, just momentum, just the physical process of walking given form. The scouts report that the enemy is visible on the horizon. You're close now. Maybe one more day of marching, maybe less. You can't see them yourself because you're in the middle ranks, but the word passes down through the formation, and you can feel the change in energy. Fear, mostly, but also relief, because at least fighting is different from marching, and different means the marching will stop, even if what replaces it is violence and death. You take death over another day of walking. Death is quick. Marching is slow torture. This thought doesn't disturb you, which probably should disturb you, but you're too tired for metacognition. You just keep walking. Day 6. This is it. You can see them now, even from your position in the formation. The Macedonian army is arrayed across a ridgeline about 3 miles ahead. Thousands of men, their shields catching the morning sun. Perseus's army. The reason you've been walking for a week, the reason your feet are destroyed and your shoulders are ruined and your mind is gone. The Roman formation halts about a mile away from them, and the order comes down to make camp and prepare for battle tomorrow. Tomorrow, not today. You have to build another camp, sleep another night, wait another day. This should be frustrating, but you're beyond frustration. You're beyond everything except the simple mechanics of continuing to exist. You dig your section of ditch, you pound your stakes, you set up your tent. You eat your rations, actually eat them this time because you'll need energy for tomorrow. You sharpen your gladius with a whetstone, testing the edge with your thumb until it draws blood. You check your armor for weak links in the mail, find 2 that are starting to fail, and repair them with wire. These are the preparations for battle. These are the rituals that might keep you alive tomorrow, or might not. Either way, tonight you'll sleep, and tomorrow you'll fight, and the marching will finally be over. You can't sleep. Nobody can sleep. The entire camp is restless. 50,000 men lying in their tents, knowing that tomorrow a significant percentage of them will die. You lie on your back staring at the dark tent ceiling and think about battle. You fought before, twice. You know what it's like. The absolute chaos, the noise, the smell of blood and shit and fear. The way your training takes over and you become an automaton again, but a different kind. One designed for killing instead of walking. You think about your family. Your mother, who cried when you left. Your brother, the smart one, who became a baker. Your father, who died when you were 12 and never saw you join the legions. You think about the farm you grew up on, the olive grove, the goats. You think about how you'll probably never see any of it again. This thought is strangely peaceful. Not sad, just final, like completing a story. You joined the army at 18 to escape poverty. You're 23 now, 5 years of service. You've seen Gaul, Hispania, Macedonia. You've killed men whose names you'll never know. You've walked thousands of miles. If you die tomorrow, at least you'll die having lived more than most people in your village ever will. This is Roman logic. Dying in battle is honorable. Dying in battle is preferable to dying old and forgotten. You almost believe it. Morning comes, the battle morning. The cornicen blows, but there's no groaning this time, just silence and movement. Men rise like the dead coming to life. You eat breakfast. You put on your armor, every piece, the full kit. You join your formation. But it's different today. Today, you're not in marching order. You're in battle formation. The legion forms up in its traditional checkerboard pattern. Hastati in front, principes behind them, triarii in the rear. You're a principes, the experienced soldiers, the ones who fight when the hastati can't break through. Your position is third row, which means you'll probably see action, but probably won't be in the first contact. Probably. The entire army is arranged across the valley floor, facing the Macedonian position on the ridge. The enemy has the high ground, which is bad for you. But you outnumber them maybe 2-1, which is good for you. The generals will make speeches about glory and Rome and duty, but you can't hear them from where you're standing, and you wouldn't care if you could. The only thing that matters is the man to your left and the man to your right, and keeping your shield up and your gladius ready. The sun rises higher. The armies face each other across maybe 300 yards of empty ground. And you wait. The order comes down. Advance. The entire line moves forward as one organism. Thousands of men walking in perfect synchronization toward the enemy position. This is different from marching. This is slower, more deliberate, maintaining formation integrity above all else. Your shield is up, covering most of your body. Your pilum is ready to throw. Your gladius is loose in its scabbard. You walk forward, step by step, and you can see the Macedonian line getting closer, can see their phalanx forming, those impossibly long sarissas pointing forward like a forest of iron. 300 yards, 250, 200. The enemy isn't moving, just standing there in their formation, pikes leveled. This is the worst part, the walking toward death, watching it approach, knowing what's coming, but unable to stop it, because stopping means dying alone instead of dying with your unit. 150 yards, 100. The order comes, halt. The line stops. The order comes, pila ready. You shift your pilum to throwing position, arm back, weight on your rear foot. You can see individual faces now in the enemy line. Young men like you, terrified like you, about to kill or die like you. 75 yards, 50. The trumpet blows, you throw. Your pilum joins thousands of others arcing through the air, a black cloud of iron-tipped death falling toward the Macedonian lines. You don't watch where it lands, because you're already moving. The entire formation surging forward at the run now. Shields up, gladii drawn, roaring. The noise is unbelievable. 50,000 men screaming all at once. And then you hit the enemy line, and the world becomes chaos. Your shield slams into something, someone. You stab forward blindly, feel resistance, feel something give, pull back, stab again. Someone is trying to stab you over your shield. You deflect it with your blade, duck, come up stabbing. A sarissa point goes past your head, so close you feel the air move. You're not thinking anymore, you're just reaction, just training, just the mechanical process of staying alive 1 second at a time. Press forward, shield up, stab, stab, stab. The man in front of you goes down, and you step over him, stepping on him, into the gap he left. Someone hits your shield so hard, you feel it in your spine. You brace, push back, create space, stab into that space. The noise is overwhelming. Screaming, metal on metal, metal on bone, men dying, men killing, all compressed into this insane crush of bodies and shields and weapons, and blood and terror and fury. Time stops meaning anything. You could have been fighting for 5 minutes or 5 hours. Your arm is burning from stabbing. Your shield arm is numb. You've killed at least 3 men, maybe more. You can't remember. Everything is blur and blood and noise. And then suddenly, the enemy line breaks. You don't know why, don't know what caused it. But the Macedonians are running, fleeing back up the ridge. And the entire Roman army surges forward, chasing them. You run. You're exhausted. You've been marching for 6 days and fighting for gods know how long. But you run anyway, because the running enemy can be killed and the stopped enemy can regroup. You chase them up the hill, your lungs burning, your legs screaming, and you catch one, a young soldier who's stumbled, and you kill him from behind without thinking, without hesitating. Just stab him in the back and keep running. You reach the top of the ridge, and the enemy camp is there, abandoned, and the army falls on it like locusts. Looting, chaos, men grabbing anything valuable, fighting each other over prizes. You don't join them, you just stop, finally stop, and stand there breathing and bleeding and trying to understand that you're alive. The battle is over. You survived. The marching is over. You survived that too. You're alive. The aftermath of battle is somehow worse than the battle itself. During fighting, you don't have time to think, to see, to understand. After, you have nothing but time. You walk back down the hillside, picking your way through bodies, Roman and Macedonian mixed together, and you see the costs. Men with their insides on their outsides, men with their heads split open, men still alive, screaming for help or water or their mothers. The medics move among them, deciding who can be saved and who can't, and the ones who can't are given mercy with a quick blade. You find Gaius. He's alive, sitting on the ground with a cut on his arm that's bleeding but not dangerous. You find Titus. He's dead, speared through the neck, his bloody feet finally at rest. You stand over his body for a moment, and you realize you never knew his family name, never knew where he was from, never really knew anything about him, except that he marched beside you and now he's dead. This should mean something. This should hurt. But you're too empty to hurt. You're too used up. You just stand there, then you walk away, back to where the legion is reforming. The centurions are doing head count, determining casualties. Your century of 63 men is now 41 men. 22 gone. 1 in 3. This is considered acceptable losses. That night, the army makes camp on the battlefield, which means sleeping surrounded by the dead because there are too many bodies to bury immediately. You can smell them. You can hear the wounded ones who haven't been found yet crying out in the darkness. You sit outside your tent because you can't face the enclosed space, and you clean your equipment mechanically. Wipe blood off your gladius. Try to pound the dents out of your shield. Check your chainmail for damage. Gaius sits next to you, doing the same thing. Neither of you talks. What would you say? You won? You survived? Congratulations on not dying? The words are meaningless. Tomorrow the army will march again, back the way you came, a victory procession. You'll walk back through the same villages, past the same hills, covering the same ground. But it won't feel the same because you're not the same. The march broke something in you, and the battle broke something else, and you're not sure what's left. Whether there's enough of Marcus Flavius Cursor remaining to matter, or if you're just empty armor walking around. You think about the fact that you have 17 more years of service before you can retire, assuming you live that long. 17 more years of marching and fighting and dying inside. You're 23 years old. You feel 100. The march home takes 3 weeks because the army moves slower in victory, taking time to accept surrender from local cities, establish garrisons, demonstrate Roman power. You walk the same roads in reverse, but everything looks different. Or maybe you're different, and projecting that onto the landscape. Your feet heal slowly. Your shoulders stop hurting eventually. Your body recovers. But something else doesn't recover. Something inside that you can't name. You walk and walk and walk, and you think about all the men who didn't make it, who died marching or fighting or from disease or infection or just bad luck. You think about how the army replaced them with new recruits who will have to do it all over again. You think about how you'll have to do it all over again. Next campaign, next season, next war. Rome is always fighting someone. There's always another enemy, another march, another battle. This is your life now, this cycle of violence and exhaustion, until you're too old or too broken or too dead to continue. When the army finally reaches civilization, a proper Roman city with stone buildings and paved roads, it feels alien. How do people live like this? How do they just stay in one place, sleeping in beds, eating cooked food, not marching? You've been walking for so long that stillness seems impossible, unnatural. That night, billeted in actual barracks, you lie in an actual bed, and you can't sleep because it's too soft, too comfortable. You end up on the floor, wrapped in your cloak, and finally you sleep. 6 months later, you're still in the Legion because 17 more years is 17 more years. You've been on 2 more campaigns since Macedonia, shorter ones, and you've marched hundreds more miles, and you've killed more men whose names you'll never know. Each campaign blurs into the last. Different enemies, same march, same suffering, same survival. You're still Marcus Flavius Cursor, technically, but that name doesn't mean much anymore. You're just Legion. You're just one of thousands of men who walk where Rome tells them to walk, and kill who Rome tells them to kill. You're sitting outside your tent on yet another evening in yet another camp, cleaning your equipment again, and a new recruit, fresh-faced kid, maybe 17, asks you how you do it. How you keep marching when your feet hurt, and your shoulders hurt, and everything hurts. You look at him, this child who still thinks there's a trick to it, some secret wisdom that makes it bearable. You think about telling him the truth, that you don't keep marching, that Marcus stopped marching back in Macedonia, that what's marching now is just habit and momentum and the distant threat of punishment. But instead, you tell him what your grandfather told you. You put one foot in front of the other, and you keep doing it until you can't. And if you're lucky, you'll survive long enough to get used to it. The kid nods like this is profound wisdom. You go back to cleaning your gladius and wondering if you'll ever feel alive again. So there you have it. That's how ancient armies moved 50,000 men without maps or compasses. They walked. They followed each other. They used the stars and the sun and sheer bloody-minded determination. They suffered. They survived. And Marcus is still walking somewhere in history, putting one foot in front of the other, because that's what Roman soldiers did. That's what made Rome an empire. Not genius strategy or superior technology, just the ability to walk farther than anyone else could, to suffer longer, to keep moving when stopping meant death. Rest well. Your bed is soft. Your feet don't hurt. You're not marching anywhere tomorrow. Sleep deep. And remember, this was every day for them. Every single day. Good night.